you were growing up, like everybody played music. What would you say initially inspired you to listen to?
Well, we heard music all the time when we were down at the school, which is where you're talking to me right now. Um, we grew up around music lessons. We heard piano lessons, cello lessons, violin lessons. And then when we got old enough, we chose instruments ourselves that we wanted to play. My brother and sister both expressed um, interest in the guitar. So they actually started lessons at about the same time. When I was 12 years old, I went to my mom and said, I want to play the drums. So she hooked me up with drum lessons. Everything was all done right here at the school. This is where we studied, and this is eventually where Randy ended up teaching, and I teach a little bit here too, reluctantly.
And so you started out playing drums, and who did you work with back then?
You mean who were my teachers, or who did I play with?
Who did you play with?
Well, early on, my brother and I formed a band called Violet Fox, and there's been a lot of different conceptions and ideas about that band. It's been written that the band only did a couple of performances. That's not true. The band was together for probably like at about maybe 4 or 5 months. And we would put on these little shows down here by clearing the really big room. We have a room called the Grand Salon, which is like a performance room. And we would clear the room out and go through the school and take every chair and couch and set it up. And then we would have these little concerts, and Violet Fox would play. And that was kind of like our very first taste of playing in front of people. They were pretty cool events, actually. We had lights and stuff, and we really went to town. Now I ended up playing with a couple of other people too, but it was really nothing to put me on the map yet. What had happened was I got kind of tired of being the drummer. I didn't want to be the drummer anymore. Actually, this happens quite often. So I decided that I was going to be the singer. I was going to be the frontman. And so that I got a little bit more yardage with that. I did that for quite a while. Eventually, I ended up not doing that anymore and doing a couple of other jobs that weren't music, business related. And then I got back into it. And when I got back into it, I got back into it full force as a pianist.
Well, I heard from a pretty reliable source that you were a kick-ass drummer. Was that a hard decision for you to make?
No, I mean, I still played from time to time, and Randy really liked my drumming. He thought I should stay a drummer. I mean, when he found out that I was going to be singer, it was like, are you crazy? You can't sing, And he took this piece of cardboard and he wrote real heavy with a pen, not a pen, a crayon, and he tacked it up in the garage, and it, it says Kelly sucks as a singer. He should stay a drummer, and he was kind of upset about that. I've worked with Kelly Garney and playing drums, and he played bass. I've done some stuff with that, but it just didn't give me the same amount of satisfaction and pleasure that being a singer did. And I had kind of a hard time at first. Nobody would take me on. I looked like a singer, but people weren't all that interested in it. And then I got a break. I met this guy from New Jersey named Sick Eddie Perry, and he had a band named Skull, and he took me on. And that was my first experience, and I loved it. I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to stay doing this for a while, which I did for quite a while. But then it came a point where I think it was in 1994, I did part of a show. I was one of the people that were involved in a show at the Avalon, which is a real nice venue that's right across from Capitol Records. and it was a good show, and it was great. Audience was great. I felt good, and I said to myself, this would be a good time to leave. And I didn't do any kind of music at all for a while. It was quite a while. When I met my wife, I wasn't doing any music, and I told her, I go, nah, 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 I'm done with show business. I'm not going to do that shit anymore. Well, that didn't last a real long time. By 1999, 2000, I was already way emerged in piano.
Yeah.
Out of all the three, that's my favorite thing. But I still do singing though sometimes. I'll do it sometimes, but I won't really heavily pursue that. I would rather take the time that it would take to do that and work on piano composition.
So what?
Also, when I was doing the singing, I don't look like I did then. So that's a consideration too. And I don't have quite as much energy to move around like that.
Yeah, I hear you. Um, so you were playing on the two LPs that you recorded. Did you like any of the work that you did on either of those on Cheap Talkin' Romance or the Rhoads album?
On Cheap Talkin' Romance, this is one of the reasons that I did it. See, I wrote the song Back to the Coast with my brother. I wrote the lyrics and he wrote the music. And I was really never very happy with Quiet Riot's version. What Kevin did, and rightly so, is he decided to call the song um, Back to the Coast, which is the chorus. And that makes a lot of sense. When I wrote it, the working title was West Coast Tryouts. He changed the title. They recorded it. I think it's one of the first things that they recorded. Um, and I wanted to put my version out because I think my version's better. Well, I know it is. And so that was part of the deal with Legend Records. That was part of the deal that I get to record that song. Now, some of the other stuff on there, more or less. But if you ask me what I'm most proud of, I would have to say off of Cheap Talkin' Romance, I would have to say my version of Back to the Coast, which also features Super Steve Silverborg, probably my favorite student that Randy had. I handpicked him. I said, this guy's going with me. This guy's cool. And I really loved working with him. He was great. And then after that, when I got into the Rhoads band, which is a metal band, um, off of that record, I would say that I really like the song Renegades. That's a really cool song. But, that music is a little bit dated, and, it's hard rock, heavy metal, which I don't have anything against, but, that kind of music compared to classical music is like comparing two bodies of water. One of them is a swimming pool, and the other one is the ocean. And I just feel that the whole experience with metal and hard rock and all that is like a lot of fun. It's a lot more immediate gratification than than composing classical music and then recording it and then having not that many opportunities to perform it. It's a lot more immediate gratification, whereas the other, it's more of a long-term thing where you can listen to the music throughout the years and it's still as vibrant. It's still important. It's still kind of like new. Like Ozzy's music with Randy. Same thing. You listen to it now, it's like hearing it back in 1981.
Yeah, it always sounds fresh.
It always sounds fresh. Yeah.
And so, who would you say that you personally, whose music you liked the most when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, um, there was a lot of music in the 50s that I didn't really listen to yet because I was just a kid. When I really started getting aware of music was in the early 60s when you could get these little transistor radios. I don't know, you might even be too young to remember this, but you get these little transistor radios, and then when we would take string or tape and put them on the handlebars of our bikes, and voila, music while you bike. And some of that music made an impression on me. when I got a little bit older, um, I was watching TV at my friend Bob's house, and this thing comes on called the Midsummer's Rock Festival, filmed, I believe, in your city, either your city or Toronto. It might have been Toronto. And this act comes on, and they're called Alice Cooper, but there's no women in the band. Well, the singer looks like he might be an ugly woman, but a woman maybe, but he wasn't. And this guy's like covering everybody in the band up with sheets, and he's beating them. And I'm like, this is like the 60s. This is like 68, 69, around there. I don't think it's before 68. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is crazy. So I looked into it a little bit, and these cats had a couple records out. They had Pretties for You, and they had Easy Action, and that's when I got into the band. They weren't charting. Most people had no idea who they were. A couple years down the line, they come out with Love It to Death, and I informed my little brother and Monsieur Kelly Carney they were going to see Alice Cooper. This was in 1971. Jesus, if I had a nickel for every time that I told this story, I could probably put some gas in my car. Anyway, this is a true story. I took them down to the old Long Beach Auditorium, Municipal Auditorium in Long Beach, and we saw the Love It to Death show, and it changed everything. Everything. The way we dressed, the kind of music we liked, what we liked to do, and needless to say, we were very huge Alice Cooper devotees. What other kind of music did I like? I have to admit, I've always liked the Rolling Stones. I liked Widowmaker a real lot, and if your audience doesn't know anything about Widowmaker, they need to check it out. Bob Daisley was a bass player. Ariel Bender from Mott the Hoople was one of the lead guitar players. That was a great band. I loved them. I thought that they were really good. I also liked the New York Dolls a lot because I happened to be at the right place at the right time and saw their very first show in Hollywood. They had come out from New York and they were playing the Whiskey, and that place was electrified. What an exciting concert. Wow.
And didn't you see Bowie as well?
Saw Bowie in 1972. You and I have talked about this. Saw him at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, 2/3 full. Randy was there with Jan, his girlfriend. I was there with a couple of my friends. We didn't go together, but we hooked up down there, and that was amazing. Saw the entire show of the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust, and a couple of other things. I think he did Width of a Circle, and some stuff like From Man Who Sold the World. Excellent concert. Great. Then later on, we saw Alice Cooper a few more times too. We saw the $1 Billion Babies. Randy saw the Killer show at the Palladium in Hollywood. I didn't go to that. He went to that, and there was so many people in that. The fire marshal was just telling people. Some of you people had to leave. Some of them were going out on stretchers. Randy said it was just insane. Packed to the absolute rafters, that place was. I didn't catch that show, though. There's been others that I've liked, too, but I would have to say that those come to mind, really, really right away. Obviously, Alice, David Bowie, different things like that. I worked for a record company, so I got to hear a real lot of music. I got to hear music that other people didn't because I would listen to demos and stuff.
So where was Kathy in all of this? Did she get into any of this too?
No, she didn't. She didn't play the guitar after a certain amount of time. She kind of